Hello everyone, so for those who don't know me, I'm an independent game developer. I just released a video game called Another Perspective, and for the people who do know me will know very well that I make video tutorials on YouTube on how to make video games using Game Maker Studio, which is the software I use to make this game that you're looking at right here called Another Perspective. A very long time ago I did a video about a game I made called Perspective, where I did a kind of design walkthrough of kind of the first half of the game, and just talking about some of the level design and design decisions involved in making the game. Since making that game, I've made this game, Another Perspective, which is a vast improvement, to say the least, upon the first game. So I thought it would be cool to sort of do that same video again, and look at the new game, and try and look at some of the things that have actually changed from the first game, and how I've improved upon the old game, and also just the new decisions I made while making this game, and stuff that might be interesting. I could talk for ages about all kinds of things to do with the design, like all the stuff that's going on the menu screen with the subtitles and stuff like that, but I'm mostly just going to take a look at the level design and sort of core game design of the first sort of half of the actual kind of gameplay. So, I mean, those of you who've played Perspective or have seen my early video on Perspective will kind of recognize the first level is basically the same. Starts out with this dude in the room here, and the door to the right of you, no indication of any controls, no indication of anything, just this text that says, "I'm looking for something." Now, when the player is presented with this screen, obviously, most people who've played a platform game before will already know immediately what to do here, but sometimes you might wonder, for those who don't, for the people who've never played a platform before or whatever, how are they going to know what to do? How are they going to know what's going on here? But for me, this was kind of a point of just sort of respecting the intelligence of your average human being a bit, and respecting the natural desire for people to just kind of experiment. They know they have this little dude on the screen here, and it's a person, it's a human being. They can relate to the idea that this is representing a person, and probably the playable character in the game, since they've seen him on the menu screen, seen him in the artwork when they probably went to buy the game or whatever, and they probably get the kind of idea that this person is them, or is their avatar in the game world. And even if they don't, they can see this text on the screen, and they get the idea that this text is somebody talking because it says "I'm," so it has to be coming from somewhere. They can associate that with this player object we've got going on here. So naturally, when players are going to experiment here, they can't do anything with the mouse. They'll try, you can move the mouse around, it doesn't do anything, so they know that they must be able to do something, they must be able to interact, so they continue to play around with stuff. If someone who's naturally into games is going to sit down and just go straight to the WSAD buttons, they'll find they're able to move around kind of naturally like that. For people who don't know about that, they might intuitively look to the arrow keys to think, no, maybe I can move around. And sure enough, they can. I've sat people who are have never played a platform game in their life in front of this, and they've gone, "Oh, what are the controls?" I've said, "Oh, just play around, try and work it out," and they have done. They've just they've picked it up pretty quickly. And so for all we know at the moment, all we can do is move left and right in this game. But when you come up to this door, because there isn't really anything else to be drawn to, there's a little light around the door, there's nothing else going on in this room, so naturally they walk over here, and a little up arrow appears over the door, which gives you the inclination of that's what you have to do to move through it. If you are using the WSAD keys at this point, you still see this up arrow here, which probably indicates to you, which can indicate, I don't know about probably, but it can indicate to you that the arrow keys are usable as well. But most people naturally associate the up arrow with W anyway if they're using WSAD, and they'll get the point that you push the up direction, or the button representing the up direction, to move through the door. So they'll get that reasonably easy. And then in here, you're blocked off by a chunk of wall going on here. We've got blocks in the way and we need to get over them, but otherwise we're just accomplishing the same thing we did before. We knew we moved to a door and that got us to progress, so now we need to move to the other door, and we've got the space bar flashing above our head, so we press the space bar and we find out that we jump. Really simple jump, and it jumps you to about pretty much exactly just over 1 block's height, So like he'll jump up, and he's 64 pixels tall, so he jumps something like about 70-ish pixels total height to allow him to get over these blocks and move on. Now, in the original perspective, I actually coded a variable jump height so that when you pressed the spacebar, if you just tapped it, you would do this tiny little jump, and if you held it, you would do a longer jump. Which is a cool mechanic, but just totally doesn't really fit the game at all, and didn't make sense in this game either. And that's why I changed it to be a very consistent jump. So no matter how long you press the spacebar before, you'll always jump to exactly the same height. And that's just one of the things that sort of changed in me as a designer. Really was like, originally I put that variable jump height in because it seemed like I was just giving the player more options and more tools, and that's always a good thing, right? And it really wasn't. It didn't make sense for them to have that, and it took players longer to work out how to jump across certain gaps because they had to work out that they had to hold jump for longer and so on and so forth. So instead I cut that out and made it all about this one jump height you can jump to. It's a very simple thing, but it's a reasonably important thing to cover, and there's a big difference between the two games. So yeah, anyway, that's the player learning essentially how to jump. And now the next couple of rooms really don't do a whole lot mechanically. What they do is make you just sort of get comfortable with the movement of the game if you're very, very new to platformers especially, and at the same time they use it to sort of establish the narrative that's going on here. So at the moment we've seen I'm looking for something. I've been looking for a really long time, and in fact I've looked for so long that I don't really remember what I was looking for. And this is like the main groundwork of the game, is that this character is in this world, he's looking for something or other, but he's been looking for so long, and he doesn't really remember what it is he's looking for. He just knows he has to find it, and that's the premise of the game. And here he starts basically talking to the player about what it is he's finding in the game world, which is that he's finding doors here. Again, this is just this long weave of just getting you used to the controls, and just to sort of space out this line as well. So it says mostly I found doors, a lot of doors, and just to kind of space that out and give that a nice sort of narrative timing thing. This room here is just like a mirror of the very first room in the game. And I do this in a few places, and it's not really like, it's not just to fill out the length of the game, but it's just to add a certain degree of pacing. Like, a lot of the game is about the character feeling very lost and very confused. And I try very hard to kind of instill that feeling in the player in a lot of places in the game, which is a weird, anti-intuitive thing to do, and I don't honestly know that it 100% worked out the way that I wanted it to, because it's weird to design a game or levels or areas of a game to create an emotion that's usually associated with bad game design, if you know what I mean. But it was very important for the theme and the ideas I wanted to get across with this game that that I could make the player feel kind of confused and lost. So every now and again I just include like a level you've already seen before, or like this sense that you're kind of going in circles, or a sense of back and forth and like you're lost and you don't know what's going on. And this is sort of in a way just this mirror of the first level. It was intended as kind of the first example of that. Again, I don't know how successful all of this stuff is, because I think for a lot of people maybe it can just feel like slow pacing, and I do admit to myself that the first like chunk of the game can feel a bit slow to a lot of players, and like I've noticed that through observing people playing it quite a lot. But that was the intent behind what I was doing here anyway. So I don't really know what to lean to particularly to what I'm looking for. Again, the player just kind of, the character, or what you presume to be the character talking, this is just text on the screen at the end of the day, but like we've naturally made this assumption that this text is coming from the player character, which is something I might get into later, or I might not. But he's just sort of explaining the things that you can perceive yourself, really, and just sort of expressing the things that your players are noticing. And like the text itself could really easily mirror the player's thoughts as they're going through this. I'm in this game, I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but I'm this little guy, and there are these doors to open, so I guess I'll move through the doors. And a lot of the text in the first like 20 or so levels of this game could easily be read as what like an average player would actually be kind of thinking playing the game. But anyway, that's getting very tangential now. So yeah, here we go. Oh no, this door is locked. To anyone familiar with games at this point, like a lot of people just kind of like, oh gee, I wonder what you have to do here. This is really obvious, but it's designed to be obvious because it's teaching you something that's very, very fundamental about the game. There's the door directly in front of you that is locked and you can't pass through it. It's got this big lock and chain on it. It's kind of like definitely mentally inspired, not intentionally, but like I've definitely noticed it now from like the doors in Ocarina of Time, where they have like the X shape and the big lock in the middle. Even the way like it animates opening is very similar. Not really an intentional inspiration, but it's definitely something that's just sort of happened, because I love that game, and stuff from games I love always seems to seep into my work. But anyway, it was very important to me that this door was in the way. I don't know if I did that in the first perspective. I did a similar room layout to this, but I think I had the key where the player is stood, actually, and had like a big beacon of light around the key, and then the door was where the key is. But for me it was very important that the door was in the way of the player getting to the key, so that the player could like get to the door and realize if they tried that they couldn't go through it. It seems like kind of over the top, but I wanted to be really, really, really super clear about like how this mechanic works. Again, like, obviously for people who know about platform games and know about this kind of game genre in general, the stuff is really obvious because it's just like, it's basic tropes, but I never want to assume that just because something is a trope that every player is going to know what that is. You know, everyone who sits down in the front of the game is going to be like, oh, of course you get keys and go through doors, you know, that's obvious, it's a video game, right? I don't want to really make any assumptions where I can about things that the player obviously knows, while at the same time respecting their intelligence to be able to work things out, so I don't explicitly like say, like I don't have a big pop-up here appear on the screen and say, oh, this is a door that is locked, and in order to unlock this door you must pick up the key, or whatever. I don't do that, I just present the game in such a way that the clarity is there through playing it. So now when it say, oh no, this one is locked and there's nothing else to be drawn to, there's a big key over there, you know, the mental link is really obvious. Pick up the key, door opens, oh good, I was, you know, the character was worried there for a second. It's just kind of a joke about that kind of whole situation, that like, oh god, it's locked, oh there's a key, never mind, I was worried I was just kind of stuck in this room now forever. So this room here was also very important to me, and like, I think a lot of people might see this room as like kind of again like a throwaway thing, but it's really like the fact that there are 2 keys in this room, that was done immediately after the moment I introduced keys in the first place, because like in perspective 1, I can't remember if I did this right away or not, but like it's possible, like players don't always understand, and they don't always understand coming into this room for the first time, that some doors need multiple keys, and the rule of the game is you collect all the keys in a level and then that will open the door. Once you've collected all the keys you can move through the door. And so some people coming into this level go, oh, why are there 2 keys, right? There's only 1 door. There are 2 keys but only 1 door, you know, that doesn't really make any sense, but it's just the rules of the game, is that you collect all the keys and then you move through the door to continue. And so they pick up the first key and they realize that, oh, the door is locked. And I even, in this text here, I do it in a sort of subtle way, where I say, oh, some doors need keys, and that's keys, like, plural. I mean, you could say, oh, doors plural as well, but it, like, oh, okay, that's new. But anyway, the main thing here is that the door is still locked even after picking up the first key. And then they pick up the second key, and again, like, the player is, the text is just kind of reiterating what, at a very basic level, a player could be thinking, oh, right, yeah, you get keys and you open the doors, I understand, kind of thing. And iterating that he thinks like the game has got to be more than just about picking up keys, right? It's got to be here for some sort of reason, there's got to be some sort of meaning, some sort of story, right? This is a video game, we have to have a goal and a purpose, right? So this is kind of what this text is doing here, is just saying, oh, I don't think keys are just what I'm looking for. And here I actually include 2 almost max distance jumps, like really, really early on, which might seem like a really strange thing to do, but I wanted to be really clear about the kind of jump distance the player is capable of. Now this jump is actually quite lenient because the jumping itself in the game is quite lenient. As I said, there's no variable jumping, and also there's a really big buffer built into the jump system, so that when you start to fall off of a surface, you actually have about like 10 frames where if you hit jump while you're falling, you'll still get the jump. So you can jump really late, and I'll demonstrate. Like that. You can see how it like starts to fall, and I press jump super late, but I still get the jump. And it's not like such a large buffer that you would notice it without really looking for it, but it's big enough that it makes jumps feel a lot more comfortable. Because another problem in the first perspective game was a lot of players would find themselves missing jumps because they would run and try and make a jump, and they would hit jump like a couple of frames too late, and then they would be falling and be like, oh, why did I miss that jump? Oh, the game didn't take my input, which is a lie. The game did take your input, it's just you were falling, and the player didn't realize that. The reason they didn't realize that, and the reason like I was wondering why players were having this difficulty, was because in so many other platform games this mechanic exists to make jumping less ridiculously strict, as it actually would be if you follow those rules that, oh, the moment you've walked off the edge, that's it, you're done, kind of thing. A lot of platform games include this, and the first one I really noticed it in was Braid. A lot of people draw comparisons from my game to Braid. Weirdly enough, this is probably one of the only things that's actually directly inspired from Braid. Like, a lot of people make the link between the design of the character, but the design of the character actually has nothing to do with Braid. Not really, anyway. Like, the jump buffer, like there's 10 frames or so that you can. Having a jump buffer that's really big and really generous like that was something I very first noticed in Braid when I started like getting into the speed running of it. I speedrun that game a lot on my Twitch channel, and I noticed this, and after noticing that and realizing that this existed in other games and how easy it made jumping feel, that's what made me kind of want to apply it in here. And it worked really well, really suits the kind of mechanics of the game, because I want the game to be about cerebral challenges more than executional challenges. I think there are definitely still areas in the game where I failed in that regard, and there are challenges that are, to some players, more about execution than working the puzzle out. And I think a lot of that failing just comes from my experience as a gamer of like kind of being like pretty decent at this whole kind of like reactional, like platforming type stuff, and assuming some challenges are more naturally easy to people than they are. And so for some people, and I'll get more into that later actually, but in this room here, so yeah, you just have to make this jump here, and to kind of get used to this idea of what kind of gaps you can clear, like that, so that later on you have a good understanding of whether or not you can make a jump, because this is pretty much the max distance. If you completely abuse the jump buffer and you know it's like max, its absolute maximum, you can almost make a gap that's like a block larger than that. But that's, it requires you to actually kind of understand the jump buffer kind of thing, and it's a thing that might help out people doing speedruns of the game. But for most people, it's just there to kind of help them make these what are otherwise considered the max distance jump. Oh, also in there was the first line, oh, I honestly don't know more than you do right now, where the character, or the text on the screen rather, directly talks to the player. Some people really don't like the fourth wall breaking stuff that goes on with the text, and they just, the same kind of people that just don't really like that stuff in most games, and I can understand their point of view. The reason it does is because that is kind of largely what the game is about. It's not to do with the fact that I'm breaking the fourth wall so much as like the game, as far as I'm concerned, never really presumed that a fourth wall existed in the first place. And I almost feel that like the game isn't clear enough about that early on, like, and because people respond to that specific line as, "Oh, he's breaking the fourth wall now," I always kind of feel a bit disappointed with myself that I haven't let the player know that I didn't do it earlier, if you know what I mean. Like, if I didn't, like, I should have broken the fourth wall from the very beginning or something like that. Because really the game, in a lot of ways, is about the game itself having a dialogue with you, the player, or enabling this dialogue between me, the developer, and the person playing it. And for that to even happen, you can't really presume this fourth wall exists, because the game is always talking to you. And that's what I was trying to get across with that line, is that the game is talking to you, the player. And then that also means you ask questions in your head of, oh, I thought I was this avatar dude here, but this dude knows that I'm here. So if this dude knows that I'm here and I'm controlling him, what other questions does that raise in his mind and like in my own? And again, like, a lot of this game is just trying to make you like weirded out and confused about who this guy is, who you are, and who the text is. For the sort of thematical narrative reasons. So here again we have like a max distance jump, 2 of them, and the first place where you can actually fall to your doom. If you do, a little "oh no" text comes up on the screen, and it just fades out or whatever, and just teaches you that, you know, it's fine, you can fall down there, you can restart, no biggie. Players who are pretty comfortable with platforming never fall down in the first place though, but those people also generally don't need to be taught the lesson of what happens if you die, though they would probably have presumed, oh, the level restarts if I die. But not really wanting to find out, they'll make the jumps happily, get the key, and come back. Again, just really, really slowly escalating things here. So this level is where I teach, where I actually expose the player to the main mechanic of the game. Now this comes along quite slowly, like you've done quite a few levels in here of just kind of walking around picking up keys, kind of being exposed to the narrative before I actually really introduce what the game is about, which is this mechanic. Part of me feels that maybe that earlier section should have gone quicker or be more streamlined to get to this point faster. But at the same time, I feel like all of that pacing and that time building was very necessary to really set the mood of what's going on in the game. Each to their own, as far as that's concerned. But anyway, specific to the design of this room, so this room worked differently in Perspective 1, and I designed it in a lot of different ways before eventually deciding I was happy with this. I wanted it all to be contained in one room, and I wanted this idea that the player could see a thing that they can't reach, in this case the key. And he says, oh, I'm trapped, I can't reach that key. This level, you know, when you don't know about the mechanics, this level is visually, it's impossible. Because there's a key all the way over there. We've already expressed how far we can jump, we can't make that jump, that's way too far away. So how are we supposed to get that key and enter the door? Now the player knows that they must be able to do something here, but just something for you to notice in the first few seconds, like you'll see, I mean you can see now there's a little shift key flashing above player's head teaching you kind of what to do next, but to begin with there's like a good like 3 or 4 seconds here where that thing doesn't show up. And you're just a brief pause there, like I intentionally didn't show that shift key right away because I just wanted people to just sort of take in this screen and kind of look at the elements around here and just kind of go, well, what's gonna happen here? I just kind of want to build some curiosity and build some suspense, because this, if you've watched the trailers and stuff of the game, you already kind of know what's going on here. But for a lot of people who I just sat down in front of this game without telling them anything about the game and just said, oh, you know, it'll teach you how to play, just play it as you play it. This is like a big moment for people, because people so far they've just been playing like a really traditional platforming experience, right? And they come into this room, they have this little brief pause where it's just like, oh, I don't really know what's going on here, what's gonna happen? And then the shift key thing comes up above this guy, this little grey dude over here's head, and it's like, oh, what's that about? And so they press shift, and then they swap to this dude over here, and it's a big oh moment where like they suddenly get it. They suddenly get what this game is about, and they've swapped control from this grey character over to this other character, and now this character looks exactly like I did before. He woke up and he became coloured, and now he looks exactly like the player I was before. And there's a guy back over near the other door, where I once was, and I can swap between them. and it just says, and the text actually changes here, and now it says, oh, I'm trapped, I can't reach the door, is this the end already? It's just showing this opposite perspective that this character would have, where he can reach the key, so he has that, but he can't progress because he can't get to the door, so what's he gonna do? So, you know, there's this swapped mentality going on here. Now that the player is over here, having pressed shift, they can pick up this key, the door opens over there, and now sometimes like players don't really like they stumble here for a few seconds, like, oh, what do I do now? But generally everyone always comes to the conclusion of, like, well, I press shift once to get over here, right? So what happens if I press shift again? And they end up back over at this guy, and now the text changes again in a much more dramatic way and says, oh wait, what? Now I'm over, how did I, what? And the character himself is really confused about this idea of, well, what's going on? How did I do that? That power doesn't, like, I just swapped bodies, what's going on, kind of thing. And most people like that line of dialogue, and it's almost a shame because in the sense that they don't actually notice the first exchange. And it's because it's a very minor transition in the room, and it's something they're not really looking at. So let's go through that again. Where it says here, I'm trapped, I can't reach that key, is this the end already? And now it changes to, I can't reach the door, is this the end already? But it's almost the exact same line, just with like one word changed. Actually two, because I think it says the door instead of that door, but I'm not sure actually, let's find out. Yeah, the door. But you can see how like it's a very, very subtle change there, and the player is, like, all their attention is on the fact that on this character with the shift key above its head and like swapping to this guy and like seeing all the light come around him and seeing him light up and come to color, that no one, well, I say no one, very, very few people actually notice this transition in text because it's not really where their eyes are during this moment. So that was the thing I thought was interesting with just players' responses to this room. But generally, other than that, I think like this room is generally pretty successful at what it's trying to do. Teaches the mechanic and has a nice sort of reveal quality about it. So this room here, for me, this is almost a design document of the game. Always like the initial sort of design idea of the game. When I was thinking about this idea of swapping between people and jumping on each other's heads and swapping around and stuff, was this puzzle. Like, it exists in perspective 1 almost exactly in the same way. Nothing has really changed about this room other than very minor changes to sort of the scale of things, and obviously there's all the fancy lighting effects and stuff like that going on now that weren't there before. Maybe I'll overlay a screenshot in the video of what perspective of what it looked like in 2011 and what it looks like now, and you can kind of see the difference. But yeah, so this room here, there's this pit, and you can fall into the pit like this, but then it's like, oh, how do I get out of the pit? But you know, you don't have really much else to be drawn to. You know, you can jump, and you run up to this guy, and you can notice that you collide with him like that. So like, if you're going to try and get to the key and you've got to experiment somehow, right, you can jump on him like that. I mean, this is all assuming that you've already completely forgotten about the mechanic that you just learned, where you press shift and you can swap to the other dude. But I mean, if you haven't at the beginning here, you can swap around with this guy and realize, like, well, he can't go anywhere. Oops, didn't mean to do that. That kind of reveals something that doesn't generally get revealed till later, but you'll see what I mean by that. So yeah, he can't really go anywhere in here. So then you swap to this guy, but then you realize that they can collide with each other because, like, just through natural experimentation, that's like an inevitable thing you're going to work out. And you can get up to here, and you can get this key. Now, this actually can take some players quite a while to figure out, but generally most players can quickly make this link that, oh, I can stand on this guy, and I was able to get up here. So I need, like, the same sort of situation on the other side. And this is sort of really the first puzzle of the game. And now, for some people, this is really, really obvious, and people get this right away, and they're just like, oh, I get it, I know what I'm supposed to do, right? But for a lot of people, actually working that out does take a little bit of time. Everyone gets there in the end. Like, I've never seen anyone get completely stuck on this room. But, again, like, I didn't want to explicitly do anything, like, after a certain time, draw a big arrow, or give, like, a hint to the player, or anything like that. I wanted to respect the player's ability to just experiment and play the game and use the things that they've learned to try and progress, because the player knows at this point there must be some way for them to progress. Or they at least have a very, very strong assumption that that's the case. So they're naturally going to experiment with the fact that they can move this guy around. They know how they got up to that key in the beginning, and it's the exact same layout, completely mirrored. So they're naturally going to eventually try to put a guy there in the same position to mirror the setup they had at the beginning, where they did this. And sure enough, they get out. There was also an example in there of how like the text changes a lot to give sort of alternate mindsets when you're playing as the different characters. Actually kind of a minor thematical component of the game, but I do a lot of kind of stuff where I try and sort of make areas of the game kind of echo each other. So that line where he says, oh, I guess that makes sense and that doesn't make any sense, that actually repeats itself a lot, and whenever it does, it's always in a room of that kind of layout with like a little pit in the middle and a sort of different twist on the mechanics of that pit based on more advanced stuff in the game. Anyway, this is coming up on like 30 minutes, so I'm going to explain kind of this room and maybe the next room, and probably leave it there for this one. May do more videos on this and explain more and more in depth about this if people are interested and people like this. Or I won't if people just don't care. So, anyway, this level here. So, no, I get it, it's a puzzle, I'm trying to figure out what it is I'm looking for. So this level is kind of built in a way to trick you, because I really wanted a way to teach the player about the fact that they can press R to restart a level. Because like I was really struggling in my head to think of a way to actually tell the player that. In the end, I just kind of conceded in perspective 1 and just had some of the text that appears in between levels pop up and tell you, oh, if I get stuck, I can press R to continue, or I can press Y on the controller to continue. And I end up basically doing the same sort of thing here, but I reserve teaching it to you until a time that you might actually need it, just so it kind of feels that little bit more natural. So in here, like, a lot of players will instinctively just gravitate towards keys and assume that, you know, everything's just going to work itself out, and they haven't ever been put in a situation where they can get stuck yet. It's not a thing. So they see a key down there and they'll just be like, oh, that's the first key I can get to, and they get to that. And then this text comes up that says, oh, I can press R if I get stuck, then the room starts over again. And because they've come down into this pit, there's naturally no way for them to finish the level at this point. Like, they can get one person out of the pit by doing some fancy, like, standing on one another's head stuff. Which isn't even a mechanic they've learned, so they're not even likely to be able to do that yet. But generally, they can't reach this key up here without the help of the other guy. So, after potentially learning about that and pressing R to restart the room, the solution to the puzzle is you put a guy over here so you can get extra height, which is something we've already learned about in the previous level. Get this key, and then you can drop down, get this key, and then you can kind of just leave him behind and go there. And notice that even if you don't get yourself stuck, you still get this prompt that comes up and says, oh, I can press R to restart if I get stuck. The only problem with that is that sometimes players fly through this puzzle, don't pay any attention to the text, and then they haven't learned that mechanic, which is kind of a failing of this room. Something I would work on if I ever wanted to do this again, I suppose. And okay, I'll make this the last one I cover for now. So I guess a part of the puzzle is working out what it is I'm looking for. So in this room, I'm teaching the player just a really simple mechanic. I've created a really simple layout that is designed to do exactly one job, and is to teach you about key blocks. And what key blocks are these little blue blocks you can see on the screen now, and you naturally, as a player, you're drawn to the key on the right hand side, and you don't know anything about these key blocks yet, but you run and you notice that you can stand on these, that they're solid, they exist, they can stand on them, they've got these key icons on them. Oh, they're probably linked to that key in some way because it looks exactly the same as the key. So they're probably linked to it in some way. Oh, I wonder what happens. They pick up the key and then those blocks disappear, and then the area that they were standing on that was solid before is now gone because they picked up the key, got rid of all of those blocks, included multiple of them intentionally, so it shows that all of them disappear when you get the key, and then you can get to the door really easily. No other mechanics, no swapping, no anything else. The room was designed to do exactly one job, and I'm actually really happy with how that room worked out. Now this is I'm gonna end this video here, but I definitely will do another video at some point because I really want to talk about this room, because this is a really big room game design wise. It's a really small room, like physically, but like a lot of work and iteration went into this room, and I'm quite excited to talk about that, but I will do so in another video because this is getting really, really long. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys got something out of that. I will do more videos like this if people enjoy it, and yeah, I'll catch you guys on my next tutorial, my next video, or whatever it is I do next. Until then, keep making games, and I'll catch you later, guys.